Happy Thanksgiving to you all out there. I'm Justin from The Vinyl Cut, and this is Alice's Restaurant by Arlo Guthrie. Folk singer-songwriter Arlo Davy Guthrie was born in Brooklyn, New York on July 10th, 1947. He's the son of folk singer and composer Woody Guthrie and Marjorie Greenblatt. His sister is the record producer Nora Guthrie. His mother was a one-time professional dancer with the Martha Graham Company and founder of the Committee to Combat Huntington's Disease, the illness from which Woody Guthrie died in 1967. Arlo's father was from a Protestant family and his mother was Jewish. His maternal grandmother was the renowned Yiddish poet Eliza Greenblatt. Alice's Restaurant is Arlo's debut album released in September 1967 by Reprise Records. It features one of his most famous songs, Alice's Restaurant Massacre. The album was a steady seller, peaking at number 29 on the Billboard 200 album chart on the week of March 2nd, 1968. Alice's Restaurant Massacre takes up the entirety of Side 1, clocking in at 18 minutes 20 seconds. Side 2 of the album consists of 6 songs: Chilling of the Evening, Ring Around a Rosy Rag, Now and Then, I'm Going Home, The Motorcycle Song, and Highway in the Wind. Side 2 clocks in at 16 minutes 16 seconds, making the album's total runtime 34 minutes 36 seconds. Normally I'd talk about the personnel on the album, but since everyone besides Arlo Guthrie is uncredited, it's kinda hard for me to do that. Instead, I'll discuss the opening track as much as I possibly can. Alice's Restaurant Massacre is notable as a satirical, first-person account of 1960s counterculture, in addition to being a hit song in its own right and an inspiration for the 1969 film named Alice's Restaurant. The song is Guthrie's most prominent work, based on a true incident from his life that began on Thanksgiving Day 1965 with a citation for littering, and ended with the refusal of the U.S. Army to draft him because of his conviction for that crime. The song consists of a protracted spoken monologue with a constantly repeated fingerstyle ragtime guitar backing and light brush on snare drum percussion, bookended by a short chorus about the titular diner. Guthrie has used the short Alice's Restaurant bookends and guitar backings for other monologues bearing the Alice's Restaurant name. The work has become Guthrie's signature song, and he has periodically re-released it with updated lyrics. In 2017, it was selected for preservation in the National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or artistically significant. In November 1965, when Guthrie was 18 years old near the end of his brief stint at Rocky Mountain College, he spent the Thanksgiving Day holiday in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, at a deconsecrated church that 2 of his friends, Alice and Ray, were using as a home at the time. As a favor to them, Guthrie and a friend named Richard Robbins volunteered to take the church's large accumulation of trash to the local dump, not realizing until they arrived at the dump site that it was closed for the holiday. They proceeded to dump the trash over a cliff on Nelson Foote Sr.'s property on Prospect Street, across from the Indian Hill School in the nearby town of Stockbridge. The next day, after spending a very disagreeable 2 hours searching through the trash for a clue and finding an envelope with Ray's name on it, Stockbridge Chief of Police William Obenheim arrested Guthrie and Robbins for littering. The song describes to ironic effect Obenheim's frustration at the ensuing typical case of American blind justice. He had prepared 27 8x10 color-glossy pictures with circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one explaining what each one was to be used as evidence against us, only to find that the judge presiding over the case had to rely on a seeing eye dog. Guthrie and Robbins both pleaded guilty, were fined $25 each by Special Justice James E. Hannon, and picked up the garbage on Saturday afternoon, following a heavy rain. Obenheim said the youths found dragging the junk up the hillside much harder than throwing it down. He added that he hoped their story would prove to be a deterrent to others. Guthrie states that the littering incident was not what I came to tell you about. He then goes on to describe his subsequent experience before the Vietnam-era draft board and the surreal bureaucracy at the New York City Induction Center at 39 Whitehall Street. Initially, Guthrie attempted to dodge the draft by appearing for his physical exam while hungover. For his second attempt, he attempted to convince the psychiatrist that he was homicidal, which only earned him praise. Finally, when asked whether he had ever been convicted of a crime, Guthrie mentioned the public dumping incident and learned that his conviction on a littering charge had the same effect on his eligibility as a violent felony. The military could not induct him unless they issued a moral waiver. In Guthrie's words, they wanted to know if I'm moral enough to join the army, burn women, kids, houses, and villages, after being a litter bug. The draft officer did, in fact, reject Guthrie for military service. According to the song, the sergeant in charge of the induction process stated, "Kid, we don't like your kind, and we're going to send your fingerprints off to Washington." The FBI was collecting data on prominent anti-war protesters through its COINTEL program, the existence of which would not become publicly known until 1971. In the final part of the song, Guthrie tells the live audience that should they or someone they know find themselves facing the draftee should walk into the military psychiatrist's office, sing the opening line from the chorus, and walk out. Guthrie notes that the military would not take serious notice of the protest unless 50 people a day followed Guthrie's instructions, at which point they would realize that it was the Alice's Restaurant anti-massacre movement. Alice's Restaurant was first performed publicly with Guthrie singing live on Radio Unnameable, the overnight program hosted by Bob Fast that aired on New York radio station WBAI one evening in 1966. Guthrie performed the song several times live on WBAI in 1966 and 1967 prior to the song's commercial release. The song proved so popular that at one point Fass, who was known for playing songs he liked over and over again in his graveyard slot, started playing a recording of one of Guthrie's live performances of the song repeatedly. Eventually, the non-commercial station rebroadcast it only when listeners pledged to donate a large amount of money. Alice's Restaurant was performed on July 17, 1967 at the Newport Folk Festival in a workshop or breakout section on topical songs, where it was such a hit that he was called upon to perform it for the entire festival audience. The song's success at Newport and on WBAI led Guthrie to record it in front of a studio audience in New York City and release it as side one of the album Alice's Restaurant, which was released in October 1967. The original album spent 16 weeks on the Billboard 200 album chart, peaking at number 29 during the week of March 2, 1968. Then re-entered the chart on December 27, 1969, after the film version was released and peaking that time at number 63. The song itself was far too long to be released, or even fit, on a 45 RPM single, and so never made the Billboard Hot 100. Because of this, Billboard classifies Guthrie as a one-hit wonder for his later hit, City of New Orleans, without regard to his success with Alice's Restaurant. It has become a tradition for many classic rock radio stations to play the song each Thanksgiving. In 1984, Guthrie, who was supporting George McGovern's ultimately unsuccessful comeback bid for the Democratic presidential nomination, revived Alice's Restaurant to protest the Reagan administration's reactivation of the Selective Service System registrations. This version has not been released on a commercial recording. At least one bootleg of this version from one of Guthrie's performances exists. It was this tour, which occurred near the 20th anniversary of the song, and continued as a general tour after McGovern dropped out of the race, that prompted Guthrie to return the song to his playlist every 10 years, usually coinciding with the anniversary of either the song or the incident. The 30th anniversary version of the song includes a follow-up recounting how he learned that Richard Nixon had owned a copy of the song, and he jokingly suggested that this explained the famous 18.5-minute gap in the Watergate tapes. Guthrie re-recorded his entire debut album for his 1997 CD, Alice's Restaurant, The Massacre Revisited, on the Rising Sun label, which includes this expanded version. The 40th anniversary edition, performed at and released as a recording by the Kerrville Folk Festival, made note of some parallels between the 1960s and the then present-day Iraq War and George W. Bush administration. Guthrie revived the song for the 50th anniversary edition in 2015, which he initially expected to be his last, as he does not believe he will still be able to perform the song, and may not even be alive, by the time the 60th anniversary comes around in 2025. In 2018, Guthrie announced the Alice's Restaurant Back by Popular Demand tour, reuniting with members of his 1970s backing band Shenandoah. The tour, which features Guthrie's daughter Sarah Lee Guthrie as the opening act, is scheduled to continue for 3 years and wrap up in 2020. To justify bringing the song back out of its usual 10-year sequester, he stated that he was doing so to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the film version of the song. The Alice in the song was restaurant owner Alice Mae Brock. In 1964, shortly after graduating from Sarah Lawrence College, Alice used $2,000 supplied by her mother to purchase a deconsecrated church in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where Alice and her husband Ray would live. It was here rather than at the restaurant, which came later, where the song's Thanksgiving dinners were actually held. Alice was a painter and designer, while Ray was an architect and woodworker. Both worked at a nearby private academy, the music and art-oriented Stockbridge School, from which Guthrie had graduated. Alice Brock only operated the song's titular restaurant for a short time in 1966, and after a breakup and abortive reconciliation, divorced Ray in 1968. She went on to launch 2 more restaurants before leaving the restaurant business in 1979. She owned an art studio and gallery in Provincetown, Massachusetts until 2016. Brock's original restaurant was called The Back Room. It was located on 40 Main Street in Stockbridge, in back of a row of stores, as stated in the song lyrics. At the time, it was located behind a grocery store and directly underneath the studios of Norman Rockwell. Teresa's Stockbridge Cafe was last known to occupy the site. The cafe's sign makes note that the space was formerly Alice's restaurant. The Volkswagen microbus mentioned in the song used to transport the garbage no longer exists, with Guthrie stating in summer 2015 that it had been relegated to history. The church, originally built as a St. James Chapel in 1829, was enlarged in 1866 and renamed Trinity Church. Ray and Alice Brock purchased the property in 1964 and made it their home. Alice sold the building shortly after the film adaptation was released, commenting that the song and film had brought a great deal of unwanted publicity. The building changed ownership several times in the 70s and 80s, until Guthrie bought the facility in 1991 and converted it to the Guthrie Center, a non-denominational interfaith meeting place. In the main chapel area is a stage on which Officer Obie's chair sits as a reminder of the arrest. In the rear of the chapel is a set of stairs and a loft area. A set of private rooms in which Alice and Ray once lived remains. In later years, the Guthrie Center became a folk music venue, hosting a Thursday evening hootenanny, as well as the Troubadour concert series annually from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Musical guests have included John Gorka, Tom Paxton, Alice Paul, Tom Rush, the Highwaymen Folk Group, and of course, Arlo Guthrie. The Troubadour series helps to support the church's free community lunch program, which is held at the church every Wednesday at noon. On Thanksgiving, the church hosts a Thanksgiving dinner that can't be beat for the local community. The annual Garbage Trail Walk, retracing the steps of Arlo and folk singer Rick Robbins, raises money for Huntington's disease research. The song was adapted into the 1969 movie Alice's Restaurant, directed and co-written by Arthur Penn, who had heard the song in 1967 while living in Stockbridge and immediately wanted to make the song into a movie. Guthrie appeared as himself, Pat Quinn as Alice Brock, and James Broderick as Ray Brock, with William Obenheim and Judge James Hannon appearing as themselves, and the real Alice making a cameo appearance. The movie was released on August 19, 1969, a few days after Guthrie had appeared at the Woodstock Festival, where he performed Coming into Los Angeles, Wheel of Fortune, Walking Down the Line, Mary Don't You Weep, Every Hand in the Land, and Amazing Grace. To be completely honest, I had no exposure to folk music growing up. According to my dad, I listened to both kinds, country and western. I didn't even know about this song 10 years ago. I actually heard it for the first time when I was at a family Thanksgiving. My cousin is a musician and pulled out the guitar after dinner. And no, he didn't sing the entire song, just the chorus, and then led into Operator by Jim Croce. After my drive home, I still had the melody stuck in my head, and decided to do a bit of research. I had no idea that the song had such a lengthy tradition of being played every Thanksgiving, or that it was based on a true story. In my opinion, this album has another two gems on it, Chilling of the Evening and I'm Going Home, but the standout star of this album is its title track. I consider it one of the finest pieces of storytelling, alongside Andy Griffith's What It Was Football and Roald Dahl's semi-autobiographical story, Boy. I wholeheartedly encourage you to give it a listen on this and every Thanksgiving and make it your own family tradition, but you don't have to take my word for it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel help, but I would rather you share this video with someone who you think would enjoy it as well. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for updates and even more videos. Thanks for watching, and happy Thanksgiving.